So I'm going to fast forward this because I think some people are already familiar with some of these findings, but I just want to say a huge thank you. I think people in this room have kept me going, and I can't believe saying some people start PhDs at 40. Well, some people start a lot later than that. It's just been fantastic to have the support from everyone here. So I'm truly grateful to have kept me going and got me to this point is amazing. Yeah, sadly, John and Jane can't be here today, and Carl Thompson, who was instrumental in setting up the Cardinal project, sadly gave apologies too, but they are much appreciated in their support for this. And this is where it all started, really. Surprise, surprise. Choking is a bad thing. Looking at choking incidence reports is what got my interest going. But I realised how inadequate they were, how infrequent they were, and all the stuff we were missing in terms of supporting our patient group. So that's what took me down this minefield, I should say, but with really interesting results. And at the very beginning, we got together with the service users, patients, and said, how are we going to discuss this? And so from the outset, we had graphics and collaboration on how to present the information. So you'll see some of the graphics are still available, so you can have a supported conversation with anybody and everybody about what mealtimes mean to you. But the sort of focus of the preliminary work was really looking at what we know about choking and how that affects people's mealtimes. What do mealtimes do in terms of influencing when it happens and when it doesn't happen? And in the local unit where I was working at the time, only 400 beds, but with a lot of staff training, a lot of screening, a lot of assessment, a lot of prompting on reporting. And over 1 year, we had 66 choking incidents. So some were repeated people, some were new people, and tragically 1 death, obviously all too many. But when we compared that to the same year across England and Wales, so at least 1,000 times more people, all that reported was 435. So a lot fewer reporting, a lot more unawareness. 1 death was reported, again, tragic, but not the same death. So it started me to question what was happening with reporting and what are the information that is available to us. And that's really what spurred me on to start writing it up with the support from various other academics, just to get me into this point of sharing what I was finding, because I wanted to know if it was the same across the country and what other people were thinking about this. I've also included a lot of contextual pictures. I wanted people to see what the dining rooms are like and start to get a sense of what it's like if you walk into the door of a dining room on an inpatient ward. It's not particularly appealing and not particularly welcoming, but more of that later. We know something about prevalence of dysphagia in mental illness. This is around working age adults. And one of the highest figures was deemed to be sort of around 46%. There's a lot of discussion about what the prevalence is, and I think honestly we don't know. But we know that choking is a major cause of premature and accidental death. But most importantly, I wanted to take the opportunity with the PhD to go back to talk to patients. What is it for them? What's it like? Why is it 1 day goes horribly wrong at the mealtime and 1 day it's absolutely fine? And this was just a typical comment from so many of the patients I spoke to. It's just stressful. The mealtime is not a good time of day. It's not an incentive. It's not something to look forward to. It's just stress. I'm sitting here in my bedroom. Do I really even want to bother going in? Because it's just an unpleasant place to be. And this is something where, in the context of an inpatient ward, which is set up for recovery, and that's what really started getting me sort of wanting to find out more. What is it that's happening and what can we change? And as always, going back to the people who have the lived experience. So the HER group is a group of service users and their carers who have an interest in experience and have lived experience of mental illness. So they're local to Leeds and York. And time and again, I had this response, oh, yeah, now you mention it, that's actually really important. I hadn't thought about it. I was admitted to the inpatient ward. What was top of the list was obviously my mental illness. It hadn't occurred to me that mealtimes was actually a big part of the whole experience of the inpatient wards, and actually it wasn't a big part of my recovery. In fact, sometimes it was doing the opposite and making me feel a whole lot worse. Yeah. So this one at the bottom, you're just concentrating on what you're supposed to be doing and you forget. So opening up that topic to this group of service users really brought home to me that it's a valuable and useful topic to explore. And again, there's the picture. That's what faces you as you go onto the ward for lunchtime or for tea time. So it's very clinical, there's a lot of metal, there's a lot of clattering, it's very noisy. And the first part of a PhD, is, as you all know, is the literature review. And yeah, search terms there, what do we find? Just very medicalised focus. What does treatment do to you in terms of swallowing, deterioration? What impairments are there in terms of your swallowing? Really very nothing about what mealtimes might be contributing to you in terms of recovery. And I think the tragedy was, a lot of people said to me, oh, well, it's just down to a task. It's a nutritional task. We just want people to get the food and water. It's not achieving that. If people are so put off by the environment, they're not even getting adequate food and water, then that's not even achieving that task. So what I really valued about the support and the supervisors I had was this trying to bring together the academic and the clinician's focus. So the research question had to be tight. It had to be a PhD that was robust. But me, the clinician, kept having these extra questions, and John kept saying, stop going down those rabbit holes. You've got to focus on one question, which is very difficult when you've got all these clinical interests. But this is the focus that Thorne's work really sort of I followed in terms of methodology. So what is happening? What's the variation? There isn't one single formula that's going to give me cause effect. It's about understanding the sort of general quality of the experience. So we interviewed 3 sets of people. First and foremost, the patients, to tell us what their experiences were like, the staff around them on the mental health wards, and then I was really delighted that I managed to get a group of speech therapists to discuss this as well. Really helpful to get everyone's different perspectives. And obviously we went through the ethical approvals for HRA, university and health service. So on to the findings. And I think the thing that really knocked me for 6 was the sort of strength of emotion about mealtimes. And I should have expected that really, but everybody had so much passion about the mealtimes and wanted to tell me about their emotions around what mealtimes bring in terms of relationships, quality, incentive, well-being. You know, it's time to make you feel better. A cup of tea with a friend makes you feel like you're getting recovered. You know, pint with your mates in the pub, that's positive. It's about building relationships, cooking for your children, sharing food with your family. Really, really powerful emotions. And the contrast when people spoke about home mealtimes with mealtimes on the wards was really very, very shocking. And that led into sort of the emotions, the connections that we make through mealtimes, the independence and autonomy that shows that we have that sense of empowerment. We can cook what we want, when we want, where we want. That's lost as soon as you're admitted to an inpatient ward with acute mental illness. And then last but very much not least is that interaction of what is the mental health and your well-being doing to your success at the mealtime? How is your swallowing affected? What's happening in terms of physiology and your potential for risk of choking? So 4 main topics. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm sad today that we haven't got someone with lived experience. I wasn't able to arrange that. So I wanted to present a few people's stories, just so I got a real sense of what the patients were telling me. So what we have here is Kathy. For me, I think the final 2 lines, it makes you feel a bit uncomfortable, all out of line. I don't think I'll go to tea this time. But then she talked about meals at home. I live on my own. It's just right. I like buying strawberries and putting cream on. Little stuff. I can sit at the table or watch the telly. It's just nice at home, really. And to me, that really brought home that contrast of what was usual for her and what she was being faced with day in, day out on the wards. So the emotional response, just to quickly whiz through some of these. Typical comments, it's just not an incentive during the day. The connections about being with your family is something very bonding about having a meal together and sharing food, compared to ward meal times where you walk into the room, you find space away from everybody else, you turn your back, get through your meal and you leave. The choice and autonomy that's available. An interesting comment, they don't like it if you be yourself. So all the time you're being supervised and watched, someone's staring at you have your meal. And then this for me was really helpful in terms of understanding what we need to do in terms of changing the way meal times run, because the more anxious you are, the more you rush your food, you pack it into your mouth, risk of choking just escalates. So it's almost so obvious it doesn't need saying, but it does need saying because it isn't written down anywhere. It's not out there in literature review. It is something that we know is an issue, but it isn't really publicised or well understood. And I think the fact it's happening on the wards, but we're not picking it up and we're not supporting people is something we need to address. And so moving on to the conclusions. So I was looking around for various recovery models, and there's one called CHIME by Leamy, which a lot of people seem to relate to. So the column on the left, all the things that sort of the acronym CHIME represents. So how connected you are, the hope you have in your life, your sense of identity and meaning, and how empowered you are. So I thought, okay, I'm going to list that next to what the patients are telling me, and I'm going to recategorize that. So instead of CHIME, I'm suggesting it's something like child, because you are very dependent, you are very hopeless, you are very institutionalized, and you lose that sense of identity on the wards. And to bring that home is this comment: you don't want to be disturbing them. Can you make me a cup of tea like I'm a 5-year-old child? I just thought that's the opposite of what we're aspiring to. We're talking about person-centered recovery. We're talking about building people's skills, but you know, these comments, they just bring what they think is good. It's not the same. I can't cook for my children when I'm in here. So really telling comments. So just to come to a conclusion, really, the gulf, I think, between inpatient ward and living at home is something we need to start understanding better. So that queuing up, we don't talk to each other, compared to that sense of being at home. It's comfort, it's food. People use words like joy and warmth and bonding, and just all that sense of togetherness around food is something that we've lost at the moment. So just to an ultimate slide. Eli, it's just the wait. You have to wait. It's busy. It's just the food. I'd like more choices. It's just my preference. So quite apologetic, really. Just the mood. Places like this will make you feel old. Just, I don't want to say, but staff, they don't really talk to patients. Just the food. I was choking. I was in the hospital. They had to slap me on the back. And at the end, he just said, it's places where you can't live your life. So what are we doing about recovery if that's not the case on the wards? Okay, we have constraints being a big organisation, but we need to start asking those questions, asking about culture. I should say I'm delighted that we've just had approval for funding to animate these stories. So we've got 4 or 5 of these little mini snapshots of people's experiences, and we're in the process of getting animations. So we're going to release that as a video. So you will see these again at some point. So just a final slide. How are we going to integrate recovery? And to me, it's all about choice. And I thought that's the acronym I'm going to stick with. So C is for culture. We need to be sure we understand personal cultures. That's been lost. Some of the comments were really very disturbing. Like, I wanted a halal meal, but they gave me a ham sandwich. I'm vegetarian, but here's roast beef. Just blatant disregard for culture. But culture in this widest sense is what fascinates me. So our personal customs about meals are really powerful. You know, having the right mug for your cup of tea, having your plate set out the way you want, eating in front of the telly or eating at the table, doing what your mum told you and that feels right, doing what mum told you not to do and that feels a bit daring, but I'm 50 and I'm an adult, I'm allowed to choose now, but mum wouldn't approve. All these stories, I think, are really telling about what your personal attitude to food is. So H is for helping. Being able to cook and prepare and be involved with the meal is a really powerful sense of empowerment and bonding and building relationships with people around you. Having the options, and sadly the dietitian couldn't be here today, but Amy keeps saying, we're not a hotel, we can't offer you a 5-star menu, but there is something about what we do about offering the options for where and when. And yes, what food, but it's more about the timing and the context that's really powerful. I don't know what we can do about independence. We are a big institution, so how can we look at that? But questions need to just start discussing these issues. And then obviously the choking and coughing. Are we really understanding what an early warning sign looks like? Are we getting the insights from people about what their eating and drinking and swallowing difficulties are? And S is for support. You know, what are the individual needs and preferences? What are their social preferences? So do you want to share a table? Do you want to sit on your own and have some quiet time? We all want to do both at different times of day and different days of the week. So can we support that? So to finish off, there's a quote from the Independent Review of Hospital Food 2020. food is a form of medicine. I think we know that. Food makes us feel better in so many ways. And it's how we can bring that back into recovery on the wards. And I'm delighted that the quality improvement team are here today, and we're going to start working on taking all this stuff back onto the wards, not as a list of rules, not even a list of standards, but as a list of questions to start the ball rolling discussions, so that I don't land with instructions of what has to happen. I'm landing with some questions that might be useful to discuss, so the patients and the staff can tell us what they want to do with it.